I've been receiving quite a few comments and reactions from a vlog I posted on YouTube yesterday with regards to South Africa's future, and purely my own personal take on it. And because I've had so many people respond and I've had so many views, I thought it was obviously a subject worth pursuing. So I'm going to sort of give you my views on it in a great deal more detail. I will share the comments with you at some stage in the future, but I mean, you can go to my video vlog and you'll see comments on there. But I want to, we can go back in history as far as time begun to actually establish who was responsible for whatever. I think to me, it's not a blame game. I'm not putting a video production together to establish who's to blame for what's gone wrong in South Africa or anywhere else for that matter. I'm putting a video out to establish how we can resolve things going forward. It's about the now and about the future. That's what I'm concerned about. What happened, in years and years gone by is history. Yes, it's important to understand some of that history. No problems with that at all. And there are good things that happened in history, and there are bad things, and we can get caught up in that too much if we're not careful. But what is important is what we do now, what happens now as people, what actions we can take now. I can't do anything about history, but what I can talk about is what I can do something about is what I do now going forward. And that's really what I want to get over in this video. Now, I'm now 63 years old next month. So I am sort of at that level of remembering things that happened in history quite well, like they were yesterday in some cases. So I'm going to share some history because I think it's history that needs to be told for people who are out there in the rest of the world who don't fully understand the full process of what's happening in South Africa. Now, I have spoken about apartheid before, and how it was a very good thing that apartheid was removed. It became a sort of nothing in South Africa. I want to start talking about positive things that in my view happened in South Africa in the time frame I lived there. And I lived there in South Africa from 1980 to 1996. So I was there as a very young man in the apartheid years, and also through the process of into the first democratic election in South Africa, and through to the starting off process phase with the Rainbow Nation and everything else. So I've lived through that era in South Africa. I'm not a South African, I'm British, as most of you know, but I want to pick up on history of where I feel it's important to understand when it was positive. Now, I'm not going to cover, where it was felt F.W. de Klerk, the president of South Africa back in 1990. I'm not going to cover that regime at all, but because I do think they did some very good things as well as some very bad things. But I'm not going to cover that episode at all. I'm going to start the process, and let's record first of all when Nelson Mandela walked out of prison, and let's look at that first of all. Now, I want you to excuse some of this footage, which is quite old. This is Nelson Mandela being released from
Mr. Mandela, Mr. Nelson
the prison he
Mandela,
was being held in just outside Stellenbosch.
taking his first steps.
The gentleman on the left there is, with his back to us now, walking back, is Cyril Ramaphosa, just going off shot, who is the new president in South Africa. Here he is coming forward again, on the left-hand side,
They leave the Victor Verster
keeping the crowds
officials,
away.
marshals of the National Reception Committee trying to get the people, and a salute from Mr. Nelson Mandela, his wife Winnie, greeting the people outside the fences of the Victor Verster prison. That is the man who the world has been waiting to see. His first public appearance in nearly 3 decades. 72 years old, walking strongly, step by step, further into freedom. ANC flags. And one wonders what must be passing through Mr. Mandela's mind at this moment. The day he has also been waiting for. Excitement, people breaking through the barriers, the human barriers of the marshals who intended to keep Mr. Mandela free so that everybody could see him. An excited crowd. They've been standing in the sun the whole day, waiting for this moment. He's walking back towards the car that would probably take him to Cape Town. Maybe it is on advice of the marshals. He has been just outside the grounds of the Victor Verster prison. Moving back. There is a very nice picture of Mr. Mandela and his wife Winnie. Moving around the car. Mr. Mandela, who has walked his first steps to freedom, into a new South Africa, now on his way to Cape Town. The man who everybody has said, and who will be playing a major part in the future political dispensation in South Africa, together with all the other leaders in the subcontinent. The cavalcade starts moving. It's about 35 miles.
Now that was Nelson Mandela's release, and I remember that like it was yesterday. I would have been 34 years old then, 34 years old, and I can recall it well. I was living in Cape Town or staying in Cape Town at the time, and therefore I was out with the crowds, looking out for his car to come through to Cape Town, where he was going to make his first speech. Now it was a day of celebration in South Africa for white people, for black people, all races. I can recall it well. Yes, of course, there was some anxiety from various quarters of the business world and from other political party members as to what would be happening next. But the whole world was looking on, and it was bringing South Africa back into the world sight of opening up its doors. And it was I could recall it with a very positive frame of mind. It was there were exciting times ahead, and I can remember talking with my colleagues and friends in South Africa about those exciting times ahead. Don't forget, he's just been released. He's not president. There is still a National Party government in place, headed up by F.W. de Klerk. But just let's think about that just for a minute. I don't want to go into the National Party's record and go back into apartheid years, but think about this decision that's taken to get to this point where Nelson Mandela, who was up until that point in time by many of us, he was thought to have been by many of us, I'm talking about who were working, living there as white people, we were all under the view that he was a terrorist. He was someone who was going to bring South Africa down, bring a lot of disruption into the country, cause major issues for the country, and there was going to be he was put away because he was a terrorist. I mean, that's what I was made aware of when I landed in South Africa in 1980. That was, you didn't discuss politics. Now, there was a lot of faults and a lot of wrongs with that, and like I said, it's history. But this is the first positive step, in my view, for South Africa and South Africa's future. It was this particular move when Madiba was released from prison, and he made those first few steps to freedom in terms of going forward. Okay, from here he went to Cape Town, and he made his first speech on the steps of the town hall in Cape Town, and I'll show you a little bit of this now, so you can see that. Here we go. This is the Cape Town Market Square. And he arrived fairly late. It was getting dark by the time he got there, so crowds were around for quite a long time. On the right on the left side of Nelson, sorry, picture just went then. That's Cyril Ramaphosa with the microphone next to Winnie Mandela there, and there's Nelson Mandela with his hands raised. It took a long time to settle the crowd down, I remember, so he could speak. That's Cyril Ramaphosa asking for the crowd to be quiet. This is Walter Sisulu, who was the founder of the ANC and head of the ANC for a period of time. So you notice Cyril Ramaphosa he's holding the microphone for Mr. Mandela. And this was a great vibe in South Africa, but it was so unusual. It was dramatic, but it was fantastic at the time. Okay, I didn't want to cover that whole speech because it was a speech where there's a lot of noise and interference, so it wasn't an easy recording on the from the SABC, which I wanted to share with everybody. So Mr. Mandela was released, and he then went about his duties to bring about a calm, shifting change within the ANC party, and also delivering lots and lots of debate and talks to various heads of state around the world, and leaders of many faiths, and many supporters of the ANC that were openly supporting the ANC, and there were other groups out there. I mean, I'm thinking of Colonel Gaddafi in Libya. I'm talking about Yasser Arafat in Palestine. I'm talking about Cuba with Castro. These are all people that the Western world had grave suspicions about in terms of their what they were doing, and obviously Nelson Mandela acknowledged all of these people as his friends, particularly people like that, because they had been constantly supporting the ANC when the ANC was banned in South Africa. It was not active in South Africa. So, but Nelson Mandela was opening up to everybody. He was seeing world leaders. He was the President of the United States, the Prime Minister of the UK, Mrs. Thatcher, many other heads of state and leaders throughout the world in terms of, so his philosophy and his thinkings were starting to come out in these meetings over those years that followed. There are many speeches on record, and I don't really want to I mean, I could cover all of them and read his books. You know, his Long Walk to Freedom is a good book. It is definitely worth reading. My father bought it for me before I had a chance to buy it myself, my late father. A speech I do want to bring to you, though, is a speech. We're now going to step up to 1994 and the election of Nelson Mandela. He's won the election now. It's now 4 years on from his release, and he is being inaugurated as the first democratically elected president of the new South Africa. And this is a speech I think is quite important. It's about eight minutes long, but I will let you watch this. Again, because these were sort of quite a long time ago, 25 years ago. You know, we're talking, the mechanisms for recording have improved dramatically. I mean, my little 4K camera here, is far better than anything that was out and about in the market those days, making these films. So things have moved on. Shows you how old we are. Okay. This is at the inauguration in Pretoria.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, distinguished guests, comrades and friends, today all us do, by our presence here and by our celebrations in other parts of our country and the world, confer glory and hope to newborn liberty. Out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long, must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud. Our daily duties as ordinary South Africans must produce an actual South African reality that will reinforce humanity's belief in justice, strengthen its confidence in the nobility of the human soul, and sustain all our hopes for a glorious life for all. All this we owe both to ourselves and to the peoples of the world who are so well represented here today, to my compatriots, I have no hesitation in saying that each one of us is as intimately attached to the soil of this beautiful country as are the famous jacaranda trees of Pretoria and the mimosa trees of the bushveld. Each time one of us touches the soil of this land, we feel a sense of personal renewal. The national mood changes as the seasons change. We are moved by a sense of joy and exhilaration when the grass turns green and the flowers bloom. That spiritual and physical oneness we all share with this common homeland explains that the depth of the pain we all carried in our hearts as we saw our country tear itself apart in terrible conflict, and as we saw it spent, outlawed, and isolated by the peoples of the world, precisely because it had become the universal base of the pernicious ideology and practice of racism and racial oppression. We, the people of South Africa, feel fulfilled that humanity has taken us back into its bosom, that we, who were outlaws not so long ago, had today be given the rare privilege to be hosted to the nations of the world on our own soil. We thank all our distinguished international guests for having come to take possession with the people of our country what is, after all, a common vigil for justice, for peace, for human dignity. We trust that you will continue to stand by us as we tackle the challenges of building peace, prosperity, non-sexism, non-racialism, and democracy. We deeply appreciate the role that the masses of our people and their political, mass democratic, religious, women, youth, business, traditional and other leaders have played to bring about this conclusion. Not least amongst them is my second Deputy President, the Honorable F.W. de Klerk. We would also like to pay tribute to our security forces in all their ranks for the distinguished role they have played in securing our first democratic election and transition to democracy from bloodthirsty forces which still refuse to see the light. The time for the healing of the wounds has come. The moment to bridge the chasms that divide us has come. The time to build is upon us. We have at last achieved our political emancipation. We pledge ourselves to liberate all our people from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender, and other discrimination. We succeeded to take our last steps to freedom in conditions of relative peace. We commit ourselves to the construction of a complete, just, and lasting peace. We have triumphed in the effort to implant hope in the breasts of the millions of our people. We enter into a covenant that we shall build a society in which all South Africans, both black and white, will be able to walk tall without any fear in their hearts, assured of their inalienable right to human dignity, a rainbow nation at peace with itself and the world. as a token of his commitment to the renewal of our country, the new interim government of national unity will, as a matter of urgency, address the issue of amnesty for various categories of our people who are currently serving terms of imprisonment. We dedicate this day to all the heroes and heroines in this country and the rest of the world who sacrificed in many ways and surrendered their lives so that we could be free. Their dreams have become reality. Freedom is their reward. We are both humbled and elevated by the honor and privilege that you, the people of South Africa, have bestowed on us as the first president of a united, democratic, non-racial, and non-sexist South Africa to lead our country out of the valley of darkness. We understand it still that there is no easy road to freedom. We know it well that none of us acting alone can achieve success. We must therefore act together as a united people for national reconciliation, for nation building, for the birth of a new world. Let there be justice for all. Let there be peace for all. Let there be work, bread, water, and salt for all. Let each know that for each, the body, the mind, and the soul have been freed to fulfill themselves. Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another and suffer the indignity of being the skunk of the world. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa. I thank you.
Well, I think that was I let that whole speech run because Madiba made some important statements, and it would have been easy for me to just take those important statements out, which I felt are befitting to South Africa now. But, I also appreciate there's a lot of people, young people in the world out there and in South Africa who may not have heard that whole speech before. And it's important that I think this is exposed to everybody, because it is a part of South Africa's history which is very, very positive. And there's the first democratic leader of South Africa, the first democratically elected president, making those very clear statements about the democracy, about no more racial discriminations being put in place, everything to be lifted, and the route forward. It was all very clear. And for the Rainbow Nation, I know the years that followed this, yes, there were some difficult obstacles to get over, but it was all going in a very positive direction. I know when I left, that was 2 years after this, the country was going from strength to strength. I actually left to take up activities in another country, in another part of the world, but that which had nothing to do with the political situation in South Africa. And for me, I would go back to South Africa even tomorrow. If I'm now 63 years old, so South Africa probably doesn't want me now, but I'm making a point that South Africa, at this particular point in time, in 1994, was on the brink of something even greater than what had just been achieved, and it was starting to happen, and things were happening around the world. Nelson Mandela was a statesman with influence across the world. I mean, they were even naming buildings after him in London, in New York, in everywhere. You couldn't go anywhere without knowing about Nelson Mandela and his statesmanship application to good and to the whole rebuild. Okay, so I want to leave this video here. That I will be picking up on the developments that come from here in my next broadcast. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.